Welcome to Have You Heard, where we talk about issues at the intersection of agriculture and engineering. Let's get started. Here are your hosts, Morgan Hayes and Josh Jackson.
Welcome. This is the Have You Heard podcast. This is episode number 15. Today we're going to start our show with what's happening on farms this week and discuss bulls, bull selling, bull purchasing, some of the thoughts about bulls in general as we come to spring breeding season. I'm Morgan Hayes. I'm an assistant professor in the Ag Engineering Department here at the University of Kentucky, focusing on livestock facilities. And in my personal life, I farm about 500 acres in my husband, focusing on commercial cattle.
I'm Josh Jackson, assistant professor in Biosystems and agriculture engineering, focused on precision livestock farming. I farm in Mercer County, focused on hay production and raise some Angus cattle.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started, Josh, with what's been a wet week this week.
It has been a wet week. So last Friday, I went ahead and tried to get some fertilizer purchased. So I did go out and get some because I only saw the prices going up. So I was like, well, if I want to apply some this year, I'll go ahead and do that, about a quarter for what it requested in the past years. And so I went ahead and did that. And by the time I did that, I also learned as well, I kind of knew, but I also learned to do a little checklist for when you're getting out a fertilizer buggy. So, check the tires. So the first one I hooked up to had flat tires. Moved to another one, get it filled up, take it home, and then do everything I can. PTO would not telescope. Would not at all. So you try this and that. Yeah, I tried everything. And so I ended up having to run that back up there and get the PTO changed out and come back, put it on. And, I looked at so that worked now. Looked up to the tractor, good. And I go out there and start spreading a little bit. And then didn't even make one pass all the way through a field. I'm like, hang on, something just doesn't seem right. Get off. As I'm looking at both of them, my beaters are spinning the same way, and they should be coming from the inside going out.
Be throwing to give you the jet pattern on the back, the out.
Yep. Not. So then I open that up and look at the little diagram, and lo and behold, they hadn't put on like they're supposed to. So I don't know what had happened, but that pretty much was all day trying to get it spread. And so we ended up fixing that and doing some other repairs on the equipment, and finally got it spread next day. My brother ended up spreading it because I had to do lawn work. Like, he ended up spreading it the next day. Because it was so it's one of those just you couldn't win for losing, but trying to get fertilizer spread. And then we also spread some other fertilizer and had some other issues with a different bucket. Shake your head at some point. But also did lawnmower clinic we repaired some lawnmowers, changed oil blades, sharpened blades, changed spark plugs. Did that for the agriculture engineering group up here in UK. And then Sunday it just rained a lot, and pretty much it's been raining a lot. So luckily I put out some hay Saturday. So that group, I'd had them on grass, but I knew that the rain was coming. So went ahead and put hay out for them, then moved some of my spring herd back to another farms for them to calve. So we're getting ready to calve here soon. So we haven't started yet. We actually are just late March because we got burned a couple of 6-7 years ago on that big snowstorm. So a lot of those little crazy stuff. But I guess how's your weekend going?
Not quite the same as yours. Not quite as frustrating, but yeah, it was a busy weekend. We delivered hay. Tried to get hay out. Got a bunch of hay out, actually. We also sold our fall weaned calves. So our last spring, those calves weaned in the fall, and we kept them through most of the winter here. They got sold this week. That was good. Hopefully, we got a good price. I think we did pretty well. The market looks like it's going to be a little bit slow here with the fuel prices, falling cattle, and also grain prices being. So it's unclear exactly what the market is, but we got at least our older group of weaned sold, so we can get ready to wean our fall calves off of their mother.
Okay, so you were able to get them out because we've had all this volatility with the markets. Just record high grain and soybean and prices, that volatility and fuel.
Right.
It's just creating a lot of uncertainty, I think, I feel like, and beef prices are fluctuating.
Yeah, I think a lot of things right now are fluctuating. That's not unusual, but it feels very stressful right now to
Oh,
be
yeah.
as volatile as it is in so many different ways right now. Very hard to anticipate. Certainly, we know if we're making or losing money, our animals our records to be that, but we haven't had a couple good years, so it's important that we sell if we can the best time. Also, glad that we have a facility where we load out our weaned calves that we can get to access when it's been raining 4 inches like this. So that was good. And certainly we need to wean our other ones just for the protection of the cows. They're working pretty hard with the winter weather and this mud and getting calves off of them so that they can recover a little bit late later part of their gestation.
Mention it. I think I talked to Matt Dixon the other day. He's saying the 15th wettest February on record. So it's definitely wet. I think 7 inches of rain, I think, across the state for at the average. So it's been wet and it's continuing to maintain that pattern, it seems.
I think that's true. I think we tend to have wet winters anyway, and the last few years have been particularly wet in February and sometimes even March. So not expecting anything different for the next month. Hopefully not quite as wet. We're in pretty good shape. We have hay out right now, stockpile out for bale grazing plan, and we get ourselves in, which should be
Oh,
the
yeah.
start of grass. So even if it continues to rain heavily for the next few, should be in good shape and shouldn't be stressing about feeding.
Okay. We're similar. We have enough hay reserves, so I think we could probably go into mid-April if we needed to.
Yeah, we have more hay stored, but this is hay that's already out that they will eat.
They will
So
eat. Okay.
this is hay that we have already committed to putting outside, so that will be. We probably have about a barn that will hopefully hold back for next year.
Maybe with fertilizer prices, maybe you don't apply as much, and maybe you don't. But just with everything being the way it is,
Yep,
trying to be a little bit economical where we can.
yep, that's sort of our plan as well. So that's what's been happening: selling calves, making sure hay was out. Interestingly enough, we've had this is maybe a random story for people, but we've had last week semis that we've had to help because they got stuck on one of our properties or a
Uh,
neighboring property. So one got stuck in a driveway at a neighbor's before the rain came in. Actually, just wasn't supposed to be. It really didn't belong in that driveway. Ended up using get him torqued around enough to get out. That was interesting. Then we had another one drive up into the yard, trying to make a turn that they couldn't make because the road is too small for a semi on it.
huh.
So we had to back to them about a mile down the road to get
Wow.
back out. So my husband says that it's not been the week for being really efficient because we've lost like half a day just trying to get semis out of really tight spots. But maybe there is like some sort of karma that's going to come from being a good person and helping poor semi drivers out. This is not necessarily like farming related, but it is really interesting, especially as you go into more rural areas, to see how drivers make decisions. And it's very clear that a lot of them are following phone GPSs and things like that are not really appropriate for larger semis, larger trucks on the road. We do live on smaller roads. I know you do as well, and
Yep.
it's actually an interesting challenge. We actually have turnaround capacity for full size semis at a
Yep.
number of our farms because we haul in hay, and that is a strategy that we've built our farms to be accessible. And so you will either find that a truck driver will be completely fearless and come not knowing whether or not that's true, or they will call and tell you there's no way they're coming at all. Um, Neither one is. Well, both are a little bit scary, actually, a little frustrating, but there's definitely a weird balance with bigger trucks on
Yeah, we've actually started taking pictures anytime like we have a semi come out there. I take a couple pictures just so I can say, because we do get that call when they say we can't make it out there, we're not comfortable. It's like, here, I got a picture. Here's a semi hauling a big piece of equipment, hauling some cattle, hauling. Here are pictures of semis parked in front of our house. There's ability to turn around within a eighth of a mile of our house, so we have a kind of a nexus point for almost 4 roads, and so they're able to turn around there. And so we actually take pictures just so we have proof. Like, yes, you can get in here. Yes, you can. Trees will not be. You know, you have to drive cautiously,
Right.
but
It
be
is doable.
cognizant. It is doable. So a lot of times, just for us to show them.
And so sometimes they will come if we have a discussion with them. My husband does have his. He is comfortable discussing where the turnarounds are. They look like, but also we've also had to go out to a main road and pick up
Yep.
things before.
And it's not as convenient when you don't have a skid steer or stuff to unload. You know?
It's much harder to unload a pallet at the parking lot of the local
Yeah.
so and so store. So
Yes.
but we make things work as we have to. So, and the trucks getting stuck is probably, some of them are smart enough to at least challenge it. So that's just a random story. That's how this week for us is spent about a half a day trucks out of inappropriate spots.
Yep. It's understandable.
Let's just shift topics a little bit, and we're going to talk a
Segue.
little bit about. Yeah, this is not a good segue. We'll talk a little bit about bulls, in particular your experience trying to sell bulls here for the spring season, and I'll just maybe ask some questions a little bit on my experience purchasing bulls and how that sort of interaction.
So for us, the process really begins almost when we're getting ready, our bulls ready. It really begins almost 2 years ago. Picking the AI for bulls for our cows. We use all of our cows are AI bred. Anything that would be used for a bull is going to be AI bred. So really, for us, it begins way back then, looking at the EPDs that the bulls we're going to use on our cows. So the EPDs, genetics, name of the bull, how much recognition, 10x is it, it will be somebody that people desire. What's popular right now in the sales? What are people really going for? So kind of looking at how other bulls are selling, what producers are looking for, and really for us, it's also focused on EPDs, calving ease, high growth potential, particularly. So ones that are going to be high weaning weight, high yearling weight, but also calving ease as well. So high performance or combination balancer bulls. We're looking at what would be a good general calf. And so then when we and disposition also as well.
Can I ask, before we go on any further? So what do you know about the cows? Like, you have certain cows that you're going to be targeting having these on the bull because you know that cow already provides some.
Or are
you looking for them to complement each other, or are you looking for them to match?
We're looking for, typically when we do our cows, we're looking for a kind of something that will complement. We're trying to get the calving ease. So even when we use AI, if it's a cow, we're still looking for that calving ease. But we're looking for that complement. So we've bred to some higher birth weight bulls and higher yearling, just because of higher yearling weights, higher weaning weights, and knowing the cow was big enough to could get some potential for really good performance. So really high performance cow. That would be one time we sacrifice that birth weight. I think we get a really high performance cow. We might sacrifice a little bit of that. And we'll look at, phenotypically, if we have a really big, tall, framey cow, what we typically try to do is size her down just a little bit with a smaller, stockier bull. And then, so still maintain those EPDs of performance, trying to get best we can from the genetic. And so getting that yearling weight, getting those top performers. And sometimes, it's a gamble because we'll take some unproven bulls or some relatively unproven from these AI side. And, they have really good genetics initially, but then once they get more performance out of it, does that go up or go down?
And when animals are popular, you said that you're looking for name recognition, one of those things. How stable is name recognition? Like, from the year that you start with that genetics to 2 years out when you're trying to sell an 18-month-old or 24 even month old bull, how solid is that name recognition at that point?
It'll vary because and we're also looking at some of the show prospects. Who are at the show? Who's winning the shows? What genetics is winning the shows? And so one of them in particular, kind of went up and down is Rampage. So the name like Rampage, I wonder if there's any disposition problems.
Right.
So for us, there were,
Yeah.
and so we got some really good looking calves, but for me, there were some issues with disposition. We're not the tameness, and I just can't be comfortable selling an animal that may not be comfortable around people. And so, for that, and I think, and then people, I think, realized that they were high performing, but they were a little more aggressive, and they had some, they were good calves. It was just there might have been some issues. There seemed to be some issues. Um, and that's just kind of one example, and you'll get some variation. So some of it was we had Sagahachi. So Sagahachi calves did really good there for a while in the early 2000s. And so with him, pretty much if you could get a semen at some point, if you get a semen, get a calf on the ground, it was still going for high dollar. That'd probably still be the case today. His EPDs would not be as good, but part of what would sell that calf would be just Sagahachi, direct Sagahachi name. And so some of it is, it's a kind of balancing game. It's the name, it's the EPDs, what people are kind of looking for that combination animal that's popular bull, like a 10X or something like that, but also has some good EPDs, good disposition. So we're trying to play a kind of balancing act of what's going to work for us, and maybe potentially our customer.
Ever, bred a bull and been like, this bull is so good, I really want to keep
There have been a number of bulls. So I had one we took to the National Angus Show, and Domino, and he ended up winning his class. So we were really, really, really torn about selling him. Really wanted to keep him, but some point in the day, we do have similar genetics within our herd, so we had to market it. So there are times which would prefer. Yeah, there are ones I really would like to keep. Is like if you were a heifer, I would have kept you. If it had been, and so some of those it's just really hard. But at the end of the day, we have to sell them. We have to kind of balance our books with and a couple of sell, keep some of them bulls, sell some steers, keep the majority of heifers. Somebody's got to make it for the income. So that'd be the bull.
That makes sense. So tell me a little bit more. So once you have calves hit the ground, that you have genetics that you've already selected for, how does the development of those bulls sort of move forward?
And so, we're looking at them when they hit the ground. You kind of look at them like this is going to be. You kind of sometimes tell if a calf like this is going to be a good one. It's stocky built. It's going to be a good one. Look that first 2 or 3 weeks, you kind of see it. But usually we wait till at least 3 or 4 months and trying to look at see who are you thinking about weaning, who's going to be a good bull, how's the performance, how are they growing. That'll be an important factor. And then we get to wean, and so we'll go ahead and if they're a low performer, they don't look as well, if they a little lighter on muscle, we'll go ahead and castrate them, and we'll have kind of our cream, a little bit of cream of the crop. And then we get to weaning, that's when we're really kind of wheedling it down to 3 or 4 bulls. We're whittling 3 or 4 bulls. And so at that point, it'll be how they look, how they've grown, but also at weaning, if they're the type of bull where I walk in that back lot and they throw up their head and run to the back, I'm really considering, that's where the Rampage is. That's where they probably lost their family jewels, was because at that point, if they're not somewhat docile, or you can't be around them, I'm not gonna have them be a bull.
So at that point at weaning, you're basically choosing the ones that you're going to maintain for another year versus the ones that are going to sell shortly as commercial steers.
The ones that sell as steers. So at weaning, it's kind of that last hurrah. I mean, they can still mess up, if they get aggressive. They'll be hit for them. Most of the time, trying to get them at that point. And if they're docile, then they're usually docile going forward, it seems. I mean, there'll still be a bull, but we're trying to kind of weed out some of those bad apples.
Makes sense. So then once you have things weaned and you've moved out, so you've got heifers you're developing, I'm sure, in one spot, and then you've got bulls that you're also developing as a separate group.
Yep.
How do you handle those bulls, manage them?
So we'll typically keep them set on a separate part of the farm. So they'll stay off from the heifers, um, for our spring herd. So for these, we'd have some of our falls going on to be this upcoming year. They're 18 months old, and so we'll have them separated off throughout the winter. We'll feed them, separate their own separate hay, give them a little bit of grain supplementation, make sure they're growing and performing. Because one of the things is you got some of them that are feeding their bulls corn silage. They look really big. They're really big. They're really growing, so we have to compete with those as well. But we want to make sure ours perform well on with a little bit of supplementation, because that's pretty much what they're going to have, and so they're going to lose some condition we put up into their cows, but they're not going to melt away like some of those corn silage fed. Yeah. So I'm not trying to make sure they don't melt away and they can perform on their own.
I've purchased, in fact, some bulls that have melted away. It's actually fascinating to watch a bull that's been overfed, both on silage and actually people that are just overfeeding. Both will cause them quite aggressive. Go out with the. That is definitely a big deal, is to make sure that we look at that when we go to purchase. We will not purchase something that, because we know it's going to be stressed when it moves onto our farm and it doesn't get fed.
Yes. And so we really want to make sure they can function, in essence, in the we get to some of these retro Angus sales, they'll have them fattened up and they look good. They look roly poly, they'll look slick, but are they going to be able to function? And we see it all the time. So just making sure ours can function as functional bulls. And so really, we're looking at potentially, even this past fall, when they're 12 months old, we're thinking about, somebody wants a 12-month-old bull, we'll go ahead and try to sell it. We'll have them advertised on Craigslist, different sites, but we'll have them available in the fall. But we're really trying to hold them off. We'll price them a little high, but hold them off till the spring, when they're really ready to go, ready to function. If somebody needs them for 9 or 10 cows, yeah, we'll go ahead and try in the fall. But really getting them to the point where they can just go out there and function and be productive. And so part of what we also do is, so at that point, when about November, or maybe a little before that, we've done some genetic testing. Some genetic testing to really prove, how are they doing as far as EP. So those, 4 or 5 bulls pay for that additional genetic testing. It's part of what has to be done for the CAPE program, selling bulls now. But it gives them a little more accuracy, and then we can really focus on. We had one bull that was within the top 1% of its EPDs for weaning weight in Europe. So I told anybody that came and looked at them, I was like, well, look at your other sale books, look everywhere else you can, try to find another one to beat. He's in the top percentile. And so really that helps us sell, because we can get a better idea of how they're going to perform, what their potential is.
And how much of that EPD is based upon the sire? How confident are you in it?
I think most of the accuracy is going to be coming from that sire, because they have so much more progeny siblings data to pull from. The cows will have some, so we do have a couple Pathfinder cows where they have a little more. They have more information. I have 10 calves on them, or 5 calves, and then we'll have 5 high-performing calves every year. And so, those are really good to have. However, we try to get as much as we can. So they do the SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphism test. So they are able to do some genetic testing to figure out, this is what should be high-performing animals. And so that's what the genetic testing, it helps improve the accuracy from maybe about a 0.05 to 0.2.
It's a pretty significant improvement.
Yeah. And so we can at least get more certainty. The other thing, we've sold some bulls, and sold the low birth weight bull, and a guy had a 105-pound calf. I'm like, what happened here? It's like, well, it's an average. It's on average, so low birth weight calf. So there will still be there'll still be some heavyweight calves, and it also depends on the cow, nutrition, environmental aspects. But it's just part of, on average, tell people, how do they perform. And I even pulled some of our data from 2 years ago. I pulled all of our weights for the calves, and you can see the difference at EPD. We had 30 animals, and if I ranked them by just the cows, so we're using pretty much high performing AI bulls. So in my mind, the AI bulls were all pretty much very similar. And so really, it was like the difference was probably somewhere in the cows. I was pulling their EPDs, looking at how that weaning weight compared to the cow's EPD, and you could definitely see the difference.
And it correlated.
It
too.
correlated. It
Okay.
correlated. And that said, oh, it adds this many more pounds. Yeah, you could see it. There was some variability, but you could definitely see the stair step effect of having that higher performing cow. And so we clarified we'd also have the feed available for them to take advantage of the potential.
That's important that you do creep feed all of your cows. They
Yep.
do have the opportunity to get all the nutrients they might possibly, which is a challenge. I think for us, we've never really pushed for some of the really high performance bulls because we don't feed our calves until they. And we not that we are choosing really poorly performing. That's not the goal either. But we have still been trying to grow our herd and make decisions about our cows based upon their ability to milk and nurture a calf, so that we can make our selections on cow herd to strengthen the cow herd first. So we've chosen bulls that have some calving ease and reasonable growth, but we haven't pushed for like top 1% on weaning weight or top 5% on weaning. Those are not our goals right now because we don't feed anything until it comes off of the cow.
Okay.
Then we feed them after that, and we can actually track to see who can actually at that point. So, but because we have commercial herds and we don't have single breed, we don't have EPD, which is in some ways it's okay to not have EPD, and in other ways it's a lack of some sort of record that would help us make decisions by the genetic potential, and instead we're having to do it by performance.
Right.
Which is okay. It just is a little bit slower process. On the other hand, it's probably more accurate because we actually will have multiple animals that we will go through that cow before we make the decision. On the other hand, they might be 5 or 6 before we actually cull.
Decide, yeah.
There's a few that get culled very early because the calves clearly are not performing, and it's a milk issue. Tell that the cow didn't pull down and the calf didn't grow. That's a clear indication that a cow isn't actually creating milk the way they need.
And this past weekend, but we kind of used a crosshatch of our scatter plot for our cow weight and calf weaning weight, just to get a general idea. And so we submit our 205-day records for all of the animals, take performance data for these bulls and performance data for all our calves, but we'll also just get a quick dirty calculation, a quick dirty idea of how the cow was doing, just getting the cow weight and calf weight in that scatter plot, seeing where they fall. Are they in the top or in the bottom half?
I'm going to circle us back to the bulls though, because I want to finish up on the bulls here because you've got all this data,
Yep.
You've got the EPD, you've got your genetic testing, you're getting ready to sell these animals. What's your strategy for selling an animal? Are you selling it at a sale? Are you selling it direct? Are you selling it to people that have already purchased from you? How do bulls get sold in your experience?
So we've kind of used the hodgepodge of experiences. So we sell sometimes at different sales. So some years we'll sell at sales. We've done the Indiana Beef Evaluation Program in the past where we send it off to testing, performance testing. We've experimented with a little bit of each, and so it really kind of depends on the market to some degree. If we think there's a strong demand, we'll try to sell them if we can off the farm. Or we'll sell them at sales. Sometimes we'll just sell them at sales to get some of that price discovery for our bulls as well. So we'll sell them at sales. We'll sell them off the farm if possible, because it's a little less work off the farm because we don't have to get them clipped up and still have to get health papers. You don't have to do as much work, make them look pretty. Naturally, a good-looking bull, I think, it's on their own characteristics. Have other ones that are slick shorn and shining, show sheen. Kind of got to do the same to make sure it stands out at the sale as well.
And I know breeding soundness, at least, are sort of like health papers. They're really important to have.
I do not think there's been. We don't like to send a bull off without We do not send a bull off that. It's worth the $50 to me, or 75, whatever it may be. Send them off with it because and actually in the county they have a good program where they do bull testing. Um, have a day for bull testing. It's a little cheap, but it's really important because for you're jeopardizing somebody else's. I want to make sure when I send that bull off, he's ready to go and functional. Everything, all his equipment is working. And so really it's covering both people from a liability standpoint because you make sure he left our farm, he was good to go and sound, he's able to breed some cows. And so able to stick some cows. Stick all the cows that he's with. And so really, we don't want to either way we have to stand behind the bull. So I'd rather stand behind him knowing that we had everything in place for him to succeed. So either way you gotta stand behind.
That makes sense. I mean, I think that is important that expect when they purchase a bull that it will function. If it doesn't, that there is that they have recourse to come back at the person's side.
It gets you. We got other bulls, so we got other take them out there and try to minimize negative impact. So we really have to make sure from everybody's standpoint, we want them to function, and that's one of the ways we make sure that really breeding sign. It's right at the top of the list for that bull to walk onto a trailer.
And when do you typically do that?
It depends. So we'll do it maybe a month or 2 months out. So we do it right about now because that's when people are starting to think about getting. You have access to a vet, so that makes it a little more handy. But we do it about 2 months out. So if they're taking potentially May, right now. And so we'll get them tested here. And so if somebody's looking for a bull right now, we can go ahead and just, if they said I want him, we'll just go get him tested and then hopefully he's ready to go. We've already tested him back February. So we test them in February. We'll go ahead and, if we're thinking it's been over 60 days, I think 60 days is the limit. Go ahead and test them again.
Test ours before fall and spring on all of our bulls, not even being purchased, but that's just our risk management. Tested before it goes in. Generally about 45 days before it goes in, but ideally, do it in the last 30. That's generally schedule it out about.
And you mentioned the selling of bulls, so it's people who come to look at bulls also have different priorities. So some are planning ahead, knowing that if they wait till May, it might be harder to find a bull, and might have to pay a little more if they need it then and there. So some plan ahead, some wait till May 15th or so, and they show up. And like, well, I started putting the cows out, so I need someone out there with them. So it just depends on the people. And then worst case scenario, you have a 2-year-old bull. Well, it's like, what if he doesn't sell it? I eat hamburger. I eat steaks. So, for me, there is no worst case scenario.
That makes sense. I think that's probably a reasonable approach. Certainly, I think if you're only keeping for your chances of getting them sold are probably especially good reputation. Yeah.
Yep.
We are sort of one of those groups that would purchase early. We actually like to get our bulls in and in the group of bulls so that the bulls can establish hierarchy in the larger group before they go in with cows. I don't like to ever introduce a new bull in when they're in with the cows, in case there's fighting. It seems like a higher risk. I would hate for the bulls to injure other bulls as they establish their hierarchy, but the last thing I want is for them to also injure cows in the process of fighting, or to injure themselves while they're in with the cows, and then I have multiple bulls that are down in the middle of breeding season, and then nothing's going to happen. Those are like worst case scenarios for me. So my personal preference is to bring in bulls early. Sometimes we even bring them in at 12 months so that they start out the herd at the lowest level, and then they can build up in the hierarchy the longer they last on, if they last on the farm. So
okay.
That's maybe an interesting strategy, and not everyone else's, but I like to have full understanding of how the interaction of all of the bulls. You put in multiple bulls, larger group.
Yeah, I've heard, worked a couple sales. I've heard the horror stories where they bought, several bulls at a sale and mixed them, and at the end of the day, then they have no bulls.
Exactly.
So
yeah, and I like them. I like them to be in a large field with just a few bulls when they're establishing that priority, and preferably one that isn't super wet. So that's one of the reasons we actually tend to fall, which is very counter to the industry. Most people in Kentucky purchase bulls in. I know that is when the demand is probably highest at like
Yeah, I mean, it does seem, I think traditionally the state had been spring calving, so that's when we typically see the demand for bulls. Get a couple in the fall, but traditionally it's been the spring.
That makes sense. So I think that's probably a pretty good overview on bulls. Probably more time than anyone expected us to discuss bulls for. But they're such an important part of making the right decisions to really make a herd successful. Both a commercial herd like I have and obviously a seed stock herd like Josh. So I think we'll end our conversation there if that's okay. And
Yep.
we'll maybe just give everyone a little bit of an update about what's happening in the next week, hopefully.
Well, it's supposed to be fairly cool this weekend, so I was planning originally to do some soil sampling, but I might go evaluate some sheep, try to get the kids something to show for the summer. So probably a little oddball. So while it's a little slow this weekend, still doing repairs, unfortunately, but it's still something that has to be done. Still doing a lot of repairs on our hay equipment, trailer, tractor, and it just seems to be never ending. But we're just trying to knock stuff out while we can. And we ordered all of our fuel filters and oil filters. They had the filter sale this past week, so we went ahead and ordered all of our filters. So hopefully that'll be coming in and just get everything changed out.
And we're going to be hopefully weaning a group of calves, so that will be good. And then also, clearly, we'll be feeding hay. Husband's going out of town, so making sure we're prepared for that. Coming up on calving season, so just taking a really good hard look at our calving groups and making sure that everything where it is supposed to be, and that we really know which numbers we're really focused on, that we think first, making sure we have a really good eye on particular. Other than that, I think also doing repair work. We have one tractor that has wiring / issue, go track down, not starting correctly, so that's a problem.
I hate tracking down gremlins. It's the start. It could be the starter. It could be the key switch. It could be a relay somewhere. It's always
could be a number of different things, but we will have to track that down. It is important to get that tractor running again before we get too far into the so.
Like worst case scenario, screwdriver start.
It is not. It's not even a screwdriver start right now. So
wow!
It's definitely it's
some.
probably in a wiring harness. What I think it is, but tracking wiring issues is a very tedious process. Never done it. Most favorite thing to do, but it's often my job. So, and we have a new multimeter that's working better than our old one. So that the chance of me finding it is better than it was a year ago. Other than that, we're still actually looking at purchasing too. So we're looking at what the market's doing in the volatility, sort of stockpiling some things for projects over the summer. I don't know if that's the right decision or not, but making sure that we have wire for some fencing we're going to do, making sure that we have enough posts for the fencing we're going to do, all of these things that might be either driven up in cost or hard to find this summer. We're making sure that we're doing those purchases right now, ahead of time.
I was on the call last night for the beef group, and that's what I pretty much told them. I was like, buy your fence posts, fencing supplies, get whatever you can now. I can always assume it's going.
Certainly the metal wire is going to go up.
And just fuel costs, probably
shipping costs are going to go up. I'm hoping that wood posts are pretty stable at this point. That's a U.S. market, and it's not a super long shipping for the most part, but there's certainly costs associated with that, and they've just been delayed in general for the last few years. So, and we're still under a little bit of a supply pressure. So it's not like they're going to be readily available. So if you have a plan, purchasing not a bad idea. I guess with that, we'll thank you for your time today, and see you guys next week. Hopefully, some of these things off of our to-do list.
Take care.
Have You Heard is a production of the University of Kentucky College of Agriculture, Food and Environment. along with the Department of Biosystems and Agricultural Engineering. Discover what's wildly possible at ca.uky.edu.